What's your problem? What a great little man on the street segment, by the way. Hey, you did a segment that said that George W. should be Peach. What's up with that? Yeah, I'm trying to get a cat, man. You want to come on my show or something? No. Then it cuts back to Bill O'Reilly. How about that? But here this guy is, this war stuff is awesome. Anybody who is against it is a moron. So here it is, like a historical record. What happened there? Some military contractors and people directly connected to the president made a bunch of money. Other than that, total global disaster. So he's been here before. Now here he is on Beer's show. Oh, it's awesome. Oh, shocking statement by me, Bill. I'm saying all the exact same crap that I got totally wrong. Just lying on TV, being a weird pervert. By the way, I'm 200 years old. And Piers is like, let's hear what this guy has to say.
Yes, using chemical weapons became a war crime. Why is it that you can't use them on your enemy, but you're allowed to use them on your own people? That has always been, where is the media on this? Using chemical weapons against our own people.
Give me a second. I'm not fancy enough to have the, what's the name? Intermission. The intermission music. I'm not that fancy yet. Why the fuck is my VPN set to Albania? I don't know. Nope. Almost. Stay up. Alright. My VPN is set to Albania. Alright. Okay. No. Of course. I gotta check and make sure she was right. Let me see. Mic check 1 2 1 2. 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 All right. Yeah, that's why my audio was fucked up because I was missing. All right, cool. Okay. All right. Well, what's popping with the population? Move this Gundam out the way. Put the Gundam somewhere. Get out there. Yeah. Move this. Make this insert. Like. Turn on. Okay. Well, nobody here yet, but that's cool. This is a episode, quick little live about a concept, piggybacking on the last episode that I put out. Check that out, Brad. Built Dialectics, talking about, Jasmine Crockett and the Black Men's Leadership class, tying that into the balkanization and the balkanization of the Ozarks and the Appalachians, because ultimately the powers that be, the people with that power, the people with the access and control, want to balkanize America. So I'll, when I repost this shit, I'll put the link to that episode in there. But this is tied into, again, that episode. On that episode, I had talked about white dialectics that I had found from these two PhDs because I was looking into something that I had thought about. Because I don't know if you do it, but I tend to do it. If I think of some shit, I'll Google it to see if like somebody else is talking about it, just to see if I can like find something to like piggyback on what I'm talking about and like see if they extrapolated on a point in a different way that I did or whatever. And just kind of compare notes. But I didn't find the thing I was exactly talking about amongst myself or like writing down and shit. But the thing I'm going to talk about real quick is dialectical racism. Okay? So if you understand what dialectics is a thesis, an antithesis, and a synthesis. So you have something that you proclaim, you have something that's counter to that, you have those two things struggle it out, and then you are left with the synthesis, like the answer to that thing, right? So dialectical materialism, as far as in like Marxism, excuse me, communism and all that shit, whatever, it is supposed to be showing you the process of going from, let's say, going from what is now capitalism into barbarism. I argue that capitalism is barbarism, so there is no end, but it's showing you the process throughout human interaction with the material world that leads you to an endpoint. Like dialectic materialism has an endpoint, which is barbarism, which is shit going to shit. Not because it's supposed to go to shit, but because if you pay attention to what's going on around you, the contradictions, because that's what dialectics ties into, the contradictions are heightened so much so that it's going to turn into something bad. Now, contradictions heightening is not something that you necessarily want to do only if you don't want revolution. Like, to explain a contradiction heightening is like, for instance, right now, right? Within the empire, within this colony under empire, you have all of these conflicts going on. You have people losing healthcare, people losing jobs, yada, yada, yada. It is building up. That buildup of negativity from the powers that be is contradictions heightening. Okay? So as those contradictions heighten, it gets to a point where people are like, fuck that, we raging. So you have, for instance, a contradiction heightening, a few months ago, you have France or whatever, you have those people protesting, burning shit in the streets. I think Italy, not too long ago, there was anarchists staying at some building. They occupied a building. Eventually, the prime minister and all that got them up out of there because they didn't want them to, squat or whatever the fuck. That's a contradiction heightened. It's like people are unhoused. People aren't being paid a wage that they can live off of. So people took it upon themselves to take over a building that is unoccupied because of the extremes of capitalism. Capitalism creates contradictions heightening to a point where ultimately a revolution happens, like something happens, right? So with dialectical racism, it is something that is tied into the system and tied into a people that is targeted within that system. So racism in and of itself is a system. It is a process in which someone someone working in concert with an entity has the control and access to keep another group of people out of the way, like put them in a bad spot, subjugate them, have them all fucked up. All right. Now, when it comes to dialectical racism, the people that are usually targeted as those that are supposed to act out and live out the dialectical racism, it is European people, that are racialized as white. So, like the people in America, like those folks, right? and pretty much anybody that kind of ties into the nationalism here operates on dialectical racism. But right now we're going to talk about people racialized as white. When it comes to that, it is the point that someone racialized as white is supposed to be put into a situation where they are raised and they grow up in a way that keeps them away from actually interacting with the material world, so they end up being very alien to so many things that the unfamiliarity can start to become uncomfortable. And the uncomfortableness, if not properly dealt with, can turn into that person being a bigot. And now that they are a white person leaning into what whiteness is supposed to be under this system, they tie into the racist system, thus becoming dialectically racist. Because this system is made for those racialized as white to be racist. It also kind of ties into the idea of like Afro-pessimism, where it is an understanding that Africans globally within this system are put on the quote unquote lower part of the totem, consciously or subconsciously. That doesn't mean that people can't unify across like class identities and blah blah blah, because class identities is identity politics, whatever. It doesn't mean that. What it means is because of the system that was created by people with control and access through chattel slavery, by way of transatlantic slave trade and whatnot, and then the capitulation. And then the evolution of chattel slavery turning into capitalism and yada yada yada. Even though again we could you end up with a society that has never really reckoned with that, regardless of what the fuck Ghana is talking about. Like, oh, Ghana goes to the UN to try to get them to recognize slavery as one of the worst atrocities to humanity. Yeah, we know that. Like, you think the UN gives a fuck? The UN was made to make the US and all Western powers, the whites, be able to do foul shit and then just be like, oh man, it's kind of fucked up that happened. Oh well, like the fucking UNRWA was made a year, what was it? I think within the same year of the Nakba. So imagine doing the Nakba, and then rather than actually going into Palestine to help the people and, liberate the people from a interloper force, the Western powers was like, how about we just give these people aid and shit? Like, that's dialectically racist, okay? Because the end result of these systems are to subjugate people. So, again, tying it back to someone racialized as white, the point of that person, right, being racialized as white within the system is to follow a a game plan, whether they know it or not, to eventually separate themselves so much from everyone else and not even be homogenous in their thinking, just be so selfish in their thinking that they can't relate to people seen as non-white. So they end up just being racist as shit. That's like, being bigoted, and if they end up in a position of control and access, being racist. So it's like another example of dialectical racism is like people wearing other people's culture in the way that they operate within this world. Great example, like Pink, who else? Jack Harlow, who else? Pink, Jack Harlow, what's the other motherfucker's name? White Iverson, what's his name? Post Malone, Justin Timberlake. These are easy examples of dialectical racism. These are people that are racialized as white, they operate within a musical space that the music that they were operating in was something that was created and dominated by Africans in America, so-called black people. They moved up in the world doing the music that was related to and a part of being a, African person in America, a black person, and they took that to another level because they're racialized as white. And along the way, they garnered fame and garnered praise and love and invited to the cookout because of their proximity to blackness, right? And then once they got to a position where they was like Miley Cyrus, once they got to a position where they was like, I'm good now. I'm gonna go back to like rock and roll or country music. They like shedded that fucking costume and was like, yeah, I was just doing it just cause. It's like that's dialectically racist because what you did was you allowed yourself to be consumed by the idea of what whiteness is and how it's presented within the society. You took on the mantle. You took up the mantle of whiteness, and you exploited a group of people. One of the groups of people that face so much backlash for whatever fucking reason, and you took a part of their culture, because music is culture. You took a part of their culture, you ran off the plug with it, and you was like, yeah, I'm done with this shit. I'm gonna just go ahead and be white now. Like, that's dialectically racist. Like, Post Malone, I don't know his real name, Justin Timberlake, Miley Cyrus, Pink, Jack Harlow are all racist. The people that you work with that be like, oh yeah, like want to touch your hair and want to speak like slang and shit, like calling uh slang and fucking and fucking ebonics millennial talk. That's dialectically racist because you're completely erasing a whole group of people and you're acting as though they don't exist, so that way you can make nebulous the idea of a culture, so you can force an amalgamation of culture in such a way that you forget where shit comes from. Like, I'm from New York City, right? I've been living in Ohio for like 10 years now. I go out of my way to make sure I don't sound like I'm from Ohio. Not because I got any problems with people that I know here. I made some real close friends here. I met some great people out here. But it's because I'm just not a big fan of amalgamation of language. I come from New York City. Somebody from Harlem don't sound like somebody from the Bronx, don't sound like somebody from Queens, don't sound like somebody from Brooklyn. No one gives a fuck about Staten Island. But it's that type of shit. But that amalgamation of culture, the amalgamation of language, is dialectically racist. So it's not to say like, for instance, I lived in Thailand. It's not to say like Young Om, who's like a really good rapper in Thailand, not to say like he's racist for rapping. It's to say culture, as far as hip hop and shit like that, black people under this system were made to be the most entertaining motherfuckers to the world, right? And they just took our shit, whatever we was doing, and like posting it out to the world. It's just like Asian people, predominantly Chinese people, were made to be seen as like, oh, they do martial arts and blah, 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 blah. Let's put kung fu shit all out in the world. And then let's have like people thinking that just because you're like, there's people that don't even really think of Asia as a full continent. Like, anytime, because we live in America, you hear China more than anything else, that there are some people that think China itself is the continent of Asia. Like, people don't know about other parts of Asia. Like, for instance, Thailand has one of the oldest forms of DNA, like African DNA. There's a tribe, there's a nation that is, I forgot what part of Thailand they're in, but they have some of the oldest DNA known to man, right? That's because humans came from, they used to think it was an East African thing, like they all came from Ethiopia, but now scientists are realizing that it was a Pan-African situation where humans had mass migrations, and then now they're thinking that there was also a mosaic kind of evolution where there were like two separate groups of humans and some evolved different. Like, mosaic evolution is like, you can have the same species, but some will evolve differently or quicker than the other. They're still the same species, but just one evolves differently. So they're thinking that kind of happened, which when you think about it makes sense. Again, when you think about it, Pan-African evolution of humans, everybody leaving the continent, going all over the world, like melanated people are all around the world because the closer you are to the equator, the browner your ass is gonna be. That's why you go to New Zealand, all these places, you got black folk there. That's because the closer you are to the equator, the darker you're gonna be. Nevertheless, the idea of dialectical racism is to create a position, especially within the States. I'm just speaking for America. This idea of America, where you can take people who are racialized as white and you can put them in a position where they are left to be isolated and only kind of engulfed in whatever culture is forced upon them by whatever white is supposed to be. They are taught through media that everybody is different. And I don't mean different in like, oh yeah, like meet your friends and shit like that different. I mean like different, like scary different. And so when they actually start to interact with the rest of the world, their understanding of other people is so skewed by the racist system that they unconsciously do bigoted shit. Unconscious bigoted shit, touching people's hair, asking what slang means, all that type of shit. Like, don't fucking ask me what I'm talking about. Like, unless I'm talking to you directly and I use some shit that you don't understand, sure. But if I'm saying whatever I'm saying and then you like, yo, what that, it's none of your business what that means. Like, it's it's the same thing. Like if I'm living in Thailand and I see two Thai people having a full-on conversation in Thai, unless I know those people or we are in a situation where I need to know what they're talking about, I'm not about to ask what they're talking about. It's none of my goddamn business. But that's dialectically racist because reason being, I could be sitting there trying to figure out what they're talking about, right? And then if I start getting frustrated because they're not speaking a language I understand, I get mad that these people aren't speaking English in a place that they speak Thai. Now that may sound funny to you, but if you think about the arrogance of what Americans are supposed to have, what a lot of Americans have, there's a lot of American people who go to foreign countries and are mad that people aren't speaking English. Like, yeah, that's anecdotal, but you know people like that. If you have friends that have traveled, it may not be your friends directly, but I know I've seen it with my own fucking eyes. People getting mad that folk ain't speaking English. It's like, bro, you in Thailand. The fuck is you talking about? And then when it comes to Thai, just like Arabic in Egypt, if I'm not mistaken, they speak a more standard Arabic across the, Arab world and the Arab diaspora. Like, it's different dialects, but it's just like with any language, but like Thai, like up north, like in Bangkok and shit is more like standard kind of Thai. But if you go like to the countryside, the way that they speak Thai is different. But that's with any kind of dialect and shit like that. People sound different. Like you can go to one part of Thailand and somebody can be speaking Thai. You can take that person to another part of Thailand and that other person might not fucking understand them because of the way that they speak. Which is to me cool as fuck because it's just like, oh my God, like people forming a language, forming a culture, because that's what humans do. Now, dialectical racism causes one, again, talking about white folk, causes one to be put in a position where because they're isolated, because they're taught all of these shit from media and from poor representations of humans who are like the people that are around them, they lean into these like odd kind of like, oh, what did you put in the food and all that type of shit. And if not checked early, will slowly build and build and build and build until they start having problematic views. And then those problematic views start turning into like people checking them on those views. Excuse me, people checking them on those views turns into them getting pissed off about being checked about those views. Them getting pissed off about being checked about those views turns into, oh, you can't say nothing no more. People getting canceled for everything. Damn, yo. I remember like if they put out Tropic Thunder right now, shit would go, we couldn't even put out Tropic Thunder right now. It's like, that's dialectically. Anyone that talks about Tropic Thunder and talks about Robert Downey Jr. in blackface is operating within the lens of dialectical racism. Because what you're saying is, because this white man did blackface so good for you in a comedic fashion that we are in a era that to you is too sensitive to understand a joke that is parodying, sorry, I couldn't get the fucking word out, parodying a era of comedy where you had the step and fetches and all that other shit, but it's doing it in a way that is actually making fun of that idea. But you're not understanding the nuance to the joke. You're understanding it from a standpoint of like blazing saddles. Like you can't make these jokes nowadays. Like motherfuckers still make those kind of jokes. There's still very raunchy comedy movies out, whether they be high budget or low budget shits. Like that one movie that came out a few years ago with those kids that were cursing up a storm. They was like 10 and 12 years old. South Park still exists. Like there's still shit like that. The issue is when you are very nostalgic, you're slowly tying into dialectical racism. Because what are the days that you exactly miss? Outside of you talking about like capitalist kind of shit, like, damn, I remember when you could go over here and it cost this much, or I remember when this thing existed. Like you aside of you tying yourself to like edifices, like buildings you used to go to, or parks and shit, or like being able to buy a hostess cake for 25 cents. Like, what are you really looking for? Because shit was the same then that it is now. It's just accelerated a little bit. So dialectical racism is not saying that anybody racialized as white is racist, but it is saying that someone racialized as white in this place, in this so-called country, has the opportunity to be racist, to be a bigot, to work within the racist system, to possibly be racist. Meaning, because of this system, they are supposed to be, not because they want to be, but because the system wants them to be, because it perpetuates, it keeps itself alive. It's autopiosis, autopiosis. Yeah, I think it's autopiosis is the word, but it's like it is self-evolving, self procreating and whatnot. It's like I think some worms and some birds or some shit, some lizards I think do it too, whatever. But like being able to repeat itself constantly. So the idea of dialectical racism, the way that you can get yourself away from it is, dealing with the contradictions that we live with within this society. So, for instance, there's been talk with like sociologists and like scientists or whatnot in regard to like post-traumatic slave syndrome, which is the understanding that because of the enslavement of Africans over the centuries, epigenetics have like passed on through generations where like certain shit can trigger certain responses within a person. And on the other end, with people racialized as white, European folk live in this country, because of the enslavement of Africans, and because some of those folk are related to some of the people that was doing that foul shit, or related to some of the people that were like apathetic or like kind of indifferent about what was happening, that they could tie themselves into like having slave master mentality. Epigenetics can be dealt with just like dialectical racism, with you being conscious of the history, you being conscious of your actions and of your moves, and really questioning interactions with other humans. Because in the end, no group of people is a monolith, right? But what can happen is, because we live in a fixed society, there is certain roles that people are quote unquote supposed to play. This is why like right wing dickheads like say Charlie Kirk will be like, oh yeah, women don't even really want to work. Like they wanna be at home making babies, like natalist shit that like fucking Elon Musk and all the rest of them saying, and like wanting to pass the Safe Act to like make it harder for women to vote and shit like that, make it harder for trans people to be able to vote and like disenfranchise a bunch of folk. That idea, it's embedded within the system. It's made for people, if you don't pay attention, to fall in line with shit. That's why when you hear shit like, for instance, you have folk that make it to like the NBA, NFL, and shit like that, and they're like, "Yo, I'm from XYZ place. We wasn't supposed to make it out." And You see it on like ESPN or all these places, like, yeah, man, they went through XYZ to get here. They did this, they 30 for 30. Wow, they really made it, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, we shouldn't be celebrating that. Not to say that we shouldn't be celebrating someone making it out of hardships to follow their dream as an NFL running back, but it's to say, why the fuck do we live in a society where it is very common to talk to someone who's in one of these positions as an athlete that they came from dire straits. Shout out to the Straight Home Moves, and the Gator Tears. But they came from dire straits to be athletes. Like living in like hardship isn't quote unquote natural in the sense that poverty only exists because capitalism does. Like hardships, if we didn't have capitalism and we just lived in a more, egalitarian, like in anachronistic, not anachronistic, anarchist society, we would be way better off. There would still be shit that's hard, but like people not being able to eat, people not having a place to live, people being imprisoned, people being addicted to drugs, people being all of that shit is the fault of capitalism. Capitalism in and of itself is dialectically racist because all chattel slavery did was it recapitulated capitalism, right? So back to tying it dialectical racism to individuals, white people within this country, they, for the sake of themselves, for the sake of white folk that get it, you need to detach yourself from what whiteness is. Like, because of these, race is a class consciousness, right? And it's not like a caste system like that silly ass book. You can use it like in jest or just like a quick explanation, but that it's not racial caste and all. It's not the same. But it's a class consciousness, right? White 1676 was made to be the dominant over whatever black is supposed to be, right? So in actuality, the person and the group of people that can actively stop racism are anyone that believe that were told that they're white. Like if you just renounced being white and you just were Tom, you just were Sarah, you from Brooklyn, or you just were Tom and your family's like fucking from England or some shit. But you're not white. If you just start slowly removing that, and I say that to say like a perfect example, I'm gonna re-up this video with like clips and shit and cut it down a little bit. But there was a dude who did he did a piece. Well, he was interviewed on one of these fucking YouTube shows, but he was a former white nationalist, like in one of those groups and shit in the 80s and 90s. And he was talking about how he had to recruit. And I brought this up in my podcast before, but he's talking about how he had to recruit. And he was saying in the early 80s, or in the late 80s, early 90s, it was kind of difficult, but not super difficult, but kind of difficult to where he was at to get white people, to get people considered to be white to join in on the bullshit. He was saying he would run up on dudes and try to, give them his spiel. And they would be like, bro, I'm from like Ireland, bro. I'm like, my dad's from like Wales or whatever the fuck. Like I'm from Kentucky. Like I'm not what like, and he had to like force into their heads that they're white and that there was an enemy out there that was trying to attack them for being white and that they had to do everything in their power to stop that enemy. So he was saying that I had to make them know, I had to tell them that they were white, I had to tell them that they were a victim, and I had to tell them that we got to defeat the enemy. So to reverse engineer that, you have to realize that you aren't white, that you're just Tom from fucking Brooklyn, that shit was created so that there can be a separation between you and your neighbor, and where like, because cultural differences is cultural differences. That's, I'm not saying you, but the idea of whiteness is supposed to be the dominant over everything else. So the only people in reality that can stop racism are people racialized as white. So would you rather be white or be human? Ask yourself that. Because if you really look at the idea again of dialectical racism only works as far as the concept that I'm coming up with that I'm writing down about dialectical racism. It only works if you lean into race as an actual thing. Like it is a thing conceptually speaking. Sociologically speaking, it's a sociogeny, so it's a sociological phenomena, but it's not a thing as far as like if you don't have it, you'll die. Like you need to be fucking understood as XYZ for shit to make sense. Like if you relieve yourself from dialectical, from dialectical racism, if you relieve yourself of whiteness and you start leaning into your humanity, you'll realize like, oh shit, like we're all human. And like not even that silly ass there's only one race, the human race. No, they're just humans. Race is a social construct. It's a sociogeny. It was made to keep people separate. There is no human race. It's just humans. So tying into dialectical racism again, another way that people racialized as white can end racism is stop going to impoverished neighborhoods and volunteering. Not to say that that's a bad thing, right? Not to say that helping out, helping kids learn how to read or working at an after-school program and yada, yada, yada is inherently evil, because it's not. You're doing a good thing. But it's to say, like, the help you really need is to talk to your community, the people that you surround yourself with, about racism. You need to get them to stop being racist. You need to talk to your cousins, your sisters, your uncles, your brothers, your dads, your mothers, your grandmothers, your grandfathers, your great-grands, your great-granddaddies. You need to get them to stop being racist, because it doesn't matter how much fucking volunteering you do at your local rec center. That is not going to stop racism. All you're really doing, honestly, is you're just keeping it afloat. You're just keeping the status quo. You're playing into dialectical racism, where you yourself are realizing like, oh, I have to be white savior. Like you may not feel like you're doing that. You may feel like you're down, but you're being white savior by thinking like, yeah, I work at an inner city school and I help these kids out and blah, 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 blah. But in reality, you're connecting yourself to a situation where you're playing out like you'll just be fucking, what's that lady's name in goddamn Dangerous Minds? I was about to say Sigourney Weaver. Whatever the fuck her name is, you'll be that lady in that shit. You'll be the white person with the do-rag on dancing with all the blacks because you guys finally got along. You finally get each other. Like that's gonna happen. That's dialectically racist, because even though you're doing a good thing by like working at a school, working with kids, volunteering at a soup kitchen, yada, 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 there is still a pity that is involved rather than an anger. You know what I'm saying? So like you still are pitying these people rather than being mad like, wait a minute, I need to talk to people that look like me about this bullshit. Like, it's dialectically racist for someone who understands this shit that I'm saying out of my mouth and then be like, yeah, my brother, my granddad or whatever, they super racist. I don't deal with them no more. No. I'm not saying that you have to have to be best friends with your racist father. What I am saying is you need to let your racist father constantly know about itself, and you need to be in the same spaces as your racist father. Because you separating yourself from that community is just allowing them to just run free and do the shit that it was already doing. So all you're really doing is helping little Jaquan learn how to read until he eventually gets shot by the cops. That's not really 1 + 1 is now 17. It's not making sense. That's dialectically racist. So again, systematically speaking, dialectical racism is made to make people that are racialized as white play out the role that they're supposed to have within society at large, in mass. They're supposed to be the people that dictate the bullshit, where you can, like I spoke about in the podcast episode that I'm going to link to this, you can be white because white is supposed to mean dominion over others, when you play, but that whiteness is tied to capital. It's tied to like a teamocracy where like people with capital, people with land and shit can vote and be enfranchised and blah blah blah. But it's also the other end of whiteness where you think you're those people. It's the little whites. It's like if you know about the Haitian Revolution, there was the big whites and the little whites. The big whites was the landowners, the capitalists, the pieces of shit folk. The little whites was the people that were like either they were indentured servants or they didn't really have bread like that, but they were also helping out Haitian people fight against like like they were keeping the revolution alive. Like shout out to Dessalines. I know people love Toussaint, but Toussaint sold out the revolution. That's why he ended up getting kidnapped and going back to France. Dessalines was like, nah, we gotta smoke everything. If you don't know much about the Haitian Revolution, I did a little live on it, but please look up the Haitian Revolution. People talk about Toussaint a lot. Again, he did a lot, but it was more than him. And you need to look up Dessalines because he was yeah. Toussaint ended up capitulating to the bullshit and trying to enslave. He was doing bullshit. Nevertheless, operating in dialectical racism. Dialectical racism is a systematic. That means it's a systematic problem, and the systemic issues can be propagated and proselytized by anybody. Like I can operate within dialectical racism. I can't be a racist. I can be a bigot. I can't be a racist because I don't have any control or access. Like Jay-Z can't be a racist because he doesn't have any control or access. Yeah, he is petty bourgeois. I'm not comparing myself to Jay-Z. I'm just showing like the extremes. Yeah, he can be petty bourgeois, but in reality, his shit can go like that if they wanted to. But the people that own him, like the record labels, like the people that he worked with to bring the fucking stadium to Brooklyn, those people are the real racists and capitalists. Jay-Z can be a bigoted piece of shit as far as because he has a class consciousness. He operates within the class consciousness of capital. He's a capitalist, but he's not though. He's petty bourgeois. He thinks he's a capitalist because that's what he wants to be. But in actuality, those kind of people are just at the foot. What the fuck? They're at the feet of capitalists. They aren't in the position that they think they're in. Again, his shit can go like that. And I say tying that back to me in regards to how I can play into dialectical racism is if I lean into whatever masculinity is supposed to be within this society, how black masculinity is presented within this society, especially through the dialectical racist lens, where I'm supposed to be hyper aggressive, hypersexual. Also, I'm not supposed to be bright, and then also I'm supposed to be very cunning about stealing. I'm supposed to be all these things. I'm supposed to be a womanizer. Like all those things are dialectically racist because you're just destroying. You're actively playing into the system, right? Dialectical racism is giving in to the societal roles that were created by the people with the ultimate control and access. So the role of people that are racialized as white is to be the overseers of all those that aren't. The role of everybody else is to play that role under the whites. The role of the ones that want to be like the whites is to suckle at the teat of them like a Jay-Z and be the little whites. So it's not that you'll ever be in Master's house at Master's table. At the very least, you'll get like a doggy bowl and be at the side of Master's table, or you'll be at the foot of Master, but you'll never be in a position of Master. And that's the beauty, for lack of a better term, of dialectical racism. It's the beauty of the system because the system of racism can be proselytized and promoted by anybody. But the people that actually benefit from it in a way that it works out in their favor aren't usually the people that look like you. Like Jay-Z benefits, again, bringing him up because he's a piece of shit and he has fake hair. His locks are fake. It's not real hair. But he is a dialectical racist because if you look at what he did to the Fort Greene area in Brooklyn, bringing that goddamn stadium, forcing rents to go up, moving everybody out, fucking up the neighborhood, that's dialectically racist because you're destroying the neighborhood for like gentrification shit for like urban planning bullshit. Like you're actively going at it, but it works perfectly for you because since you're racialized as black, you're seen as like, oh nah, he just getting money and like look at the black man, like he's just like us, blah blah blah. It's like no, he isn't. His class consciousness, he knows who he is. He knows what team he reps. Now, I'm not gonna say he's super aware of it because I don't like putting my brain in other people's heads. But what I will say is at the very least, he understands where the money is. Like he calls himself a capitalist. So at the very least, he gets that much. So the dialectical racism, again, like a who else is a there's so many fucking white people that operate within this goddamn framework. Um, for instance, damn, just so many. It's just for instance, just everybody. Just so because just so many. An easy one, like a Donald Trump, right? Donald Trump is a everybody has already said the things. He's a nepo baby. He's a bigot. He's a a rapist. Grapist. Great. He's a rapist. He's a actual sexual predator. I feel like I can say that on here. He's all of those things, right? But in the early like 80s, 90s, and shit like that, early 2000s, he was like beloved by the quote unquote hip hop community. But in reality, he was beloved by folk who wanted to be capitalists or who wanted to be cool, who were playing into the like businessman, I'm getting money, blah 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 kind of operation. But in actuality, you were just really trying to suckle at the teat of somebody who you thought was in a position to put you in a better societal spot on this bullshit ass totem. So that way you're not never going to be master, but at the very least you can be overseer. And that's dialectically racist because you're trying to play into that positional role. Like you're trying to be like that. Like you're somebody that would say that drapemonia, what is it? Drapemonia? Is that the word? That shit that white man made up that said that enslaved Africans don't want to be free. They actually want to be enslaved. Drapemonia, whatever. But you playing into shit like that. So that's what dialectical racism is. Dialectical racism understands, and this is me just extrapolating on this point that I didn't make in my episode, but I'm talking about now. Shout out to Alchemy because he liked the episode and he was asking about some shit. So this is I wanted to do this, but this is low key for the homie, for the comrade. But the idea of dialectical racism is not that every white person is racist. It's not that every person that's non-black is racist. It's not a poor understanding of Afro-pessimism. It is an understanding that this system is made for roles to be played because we lived in a fixed society. So it's cyclical on purpose, not by some kind of chance. It's on purpose. So since we live in a fixed society, people are supposed to play a certain role. A lot of people don't, or they do and don't realize it. And when it comes to people that are racialized as white, they can easily play into the role of becoming racist or becoming a bigot, becoming a racist as far as like being able to work into the system, get money, be a capitalist, yada, 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 or just a bigot at the very least, be a piece of shit, probably still get money, yada, yada. But they can do it easier than everybody else because they are forced to be shielded from a lot of shit. Now, this isn't to say that every person racialized as white is living in a picket fence suburb area or shit like that, or even that they middle class and shit like that. It's just to say like a lot of the times, even if you are raised in a neighborhood that isn't quote unquote affluent or whatever, you are put into a position where because of the system that we are in, they try to force upon you the idea that you aren't like everybody else, whether you realize it or not. It is playing to keep separation going. And dialectical racism, I don't know why that sounded weird, I just said it. Dialectical racism is made so that you keep perpetuating the system And the end goal to dialectical racism is to just keep going. Like it's just to keep going. Like it's to keep in such a way that it just never stops. It's basically like putting so much air in a tire that it explodes. But in this case, you're putting so much air in a tire that's also taped down that it will never explode. It just keeps going. You can just keep putting air in it. And people are like, eventually this shit will change. Eventually this shit will change. Maybe this shit will change. No, it won't. Like, eventually this will change. I know I've been volunteering at my local rec center. Eventually it'll change. You know, I've hired like 2 or 3 blacks to work at my business. Eventually it'll change. Like, you know, I got 7 or 18. I mean, 7 or 18. I got 7 or 8 like black and other non-white friends. Eventually it'll change. Like, no. In actuality, in reality, the only way racism as a system can end is if those that are racialized as white stop being white. It's just that simple. Just stop being white. It's easier for someone racialized as white to stop being white than it is for me to stop being black. And what I mean by that is because this system, again, working in dialectical racism, because this system was made so that I'm identified as such, so that blackness is supposed to be subservient to whiteness, since you are in the dominant position, regardless of your material conditions, since by design of this system, you're in the dominant position, you relinquishing that identity is way more powerful than me saying I'm just African. Like blackness was made by white people to erase the idea of wherever part of West Africa I'm from, right? If more people that were racialized as white go out of their way to be like, I'm not white, like I posed this question on Blue Sky, but I'm on Black Sky. But I posed this question on there, and out of everyone that like, because I talk about it all the time, out of everybody that responded to like, yo, white people have to end racism, just stop being white. Only like 2 people, I got ratio basically. Only like 2 people were like, yeah, like they like got it. Like the only like 2 people understood the sociological ramifications of what whiteness is supposed to be. Everybody else was like, how can I stop being white? I don't know what you're talking about. That's racist. What do you mean stop being white? Blah, 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 blah. It's like, fam, you can just stop being white. Like, it's really that easy. Like, I know we say certain shit like it sounds easier than it actually is in practice. No. For people that are racialized as white, if you just stop being white, racism will end. Like that's like the first step. Like that's like the first and biggest step. Like it's not allyship, because me, I don't like the idea of allyship because we're not fucking superheroes. Like we're just humans. So saying that you're my ally kind of it immediately verifies that there is a divide between us in such a way that you have to reach out to get me from whatever fucked up situation I'm in. Rather than you just being my comrade, being my homie, realizing like, yo, this system is fucked up. I understand how I'm looked at within the system. I understand the identity politics that are wrapped around what I am looked at as here. I'm going to align with people that are looked at in a different way. We comrades, we homies. But if I look at myself as an ally, it's like, okay, I'm going to help them do some shit. We're going to do some Avengers shit real quick. And then I'm going to go back to my own comic book. No. The easiest way to stop dialectical racism, first step, is for people racialized as white within this colony under empire to just stop being white. Just be like, nah, I'm done. It's that easy. Because again, dialectical racism is the idea and the understanding that this system is fixed. It is made to run a course, and it runs a course endlessly. It is cyclical. It is an Ouroboros of bullshit. And as it runs that course, certain people have roles within that system to be played out. And if they aren't aware of how the system is created, they will fall victim to doing the shit that keeps perpetuating the bullshit. Like, that's dialectical racism. Like, joining the military because you're fighting for freedom, dialectically racist. Because what? You're fighting for a word? War on terror? War on drugs. Why is the terror happening? Who's making the drugs and allowing them to come in? That type of shit. Like, you're being caught up in the system. You're playing a role. And hold on. I'm not putting that damn thing on the camera because they ain't paying me. When it comes to this idea of dialectical racism, it is not to say, again, I will keep stressing this until this live is over. It's not to say people that are racialized as white are bound to be racist, or other people that are racialized as like non-black are bound to be racist and bound to play into the Afro-pessimistic role of eventually leaning into shit that is anti-African, or like, anti-unity, anti like camaraderie type shit. No, it's to say that this system is created for people to play a role where they will eventually find a way to subjugate a people in such a way, whether consciously or subconsciously, that it keeps a divide that won't allow them to ever actually find a way, to align with people across classes, like understanding class consciousness, understanding the identities, understanding like your identity within this class conscious. Within you understanding your class consciousness, being able to, deconstruct that, build yourself back up, and be better overall. So again, to end dialectical racism, white people that are racialized as white, them first, just renounce whiteness. Just stop being white. Just, and it's not even like you gotta go out of your way, like you gotta post and fucking write it. Like when you fill out a job application, they ask you what the fuck is your race and all that shit. Just don't fill that part out. Or just like, or put like in, like, NA or whatever the fuck. Like, don't do it. Like, if somebody starts talking to me like, yeah, because we white, but no, I'm not. Like, I'm not white. Like, I'm from like whatever, and like my mom is blah blah blah. Like play into your national, or like your national background, like your heritage in that regard. Obviously, the extremes of that, nationalism in the U.S. is nasty, but nationalism as an idea is not a bad thing. But because of the contradictions being heightened within this colony under empire, it can get bad fast. So I'm not saying that you should stop being white so you can be American. No, fuck being American too. Like, because again, we talk about the Occupy Palestine and how fucked up that is. This is also fucked up. We live in a colony. Like, so claiming to be American on land that's not America is dialectically racist. So it's just be like, yo, I'm Tom, I'm not white. I'm Sarah, I'm not white. I'm Kimberly, I'm not white. Like, I'm Richard, I'm not white. It's really that easy. Because again, it's even so, and when you consider, when it comes to, if we look up the history of like all the movements when there are non-black people, fighting for, people fighting for fucking like freedoms and shit forever. When you look up a lot of the movements and you see when people racialized as white join in and are like comrades with people and they're working together, usually shit gets heightened, things get like popularized in certain ways, like proliferated in the media, because a white person to join in. Like, obviously the media are finding ways to like kind of try to separate the two groups, even though they be working together, or try to make, lone wolf, whatever. But it's to say that like they'll put those people on Front Street. And granted, the system that we live in will quite literally unalive people that are racialized as white if they aren't playing their role, like the Rachel Corries of the world. But at the same time, the ones that they don't do that to, they'll just like either try to jail or jam them up a little bit, or they'll try to ignore them in the best way possible because like a social death works just like a death. Because all press is good press, and if you get none, then you know. So if you, as a person that is in one of those groups in one of those orgs, and you're like, yo, I'm just not white no more, and like, and you renounce, and then like people come at you in a way that tries to like bring like heighten this contradiction of like race and shit like that and causing issues. Like, nah, like I'm working with my people. Like everybody's your people, right? Everybody's your people. So this idea of separation of you're in this group, you're in that group, you're this color, you're that color, you're blah blah blah, you're blah blah blah, is created for fucking confusion. The idea of race was created for because of a superiority complex that European Christians had. Like, and the superiority complex failed because everywhere they went, it wasn't working out. Like, it wasn't working out. Like, I watched this one podcast, and this one of the speakers on there brought this up about like on some like trippy shit. He was like, you could argue that European people who got into the chattel slavery, got into the transatlantic slave trade, that they were kind of working in that like idea of like these darker brown skinned people having like a different kind of aura and power to them because sun, Ra, and all that other shit, like tying in to melanin with the sun and all this other things, like that they saw those people as powerful, so they wanted to control them because they were connected to the sun in a way that they weren't, which I thought was kind of funny, thought was kind of cool. Obviously there's more to it, but when you think about like humanity, you think about like all the trippy shit, you think about like the Nazis and how they was into the occult, you think about like enslavers, how they were eating body parts. Like you think about going and digging up bodies out of fucking graves and goddamn pyramids and using body parts for like medicine and food. And you think about like lynching picnics where they were chopping off genitalias and eating those or keeping them as goddamn trophies, or they were eating bodies and bringing their kids to go see that. You kind of see like, okay, yeah, like you got like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, and this isn't to say like that it's that the browner you are, the closer to God you are, because I'm not about to get into that fucking Hebrew Israelite bullshit or the 5% of bullshit, but it's to say like that these ways of thinking have created the bullshit that we're dealing with right now, where we are still in 2026 arguing about diseases that affect quote unquote black people more than they do white people, and completely disregarding material conditions caused by the enslavement of African people, which in turn created the social system that we currently live in today, where the stresses of living within the society are why your blood pressure is high, or why you're eating the food you're eating because of food deserts, or why you're being shot by, you're being shot by the police, so that's also causing stress. So it's not that because you're black, you have high blood pressure. It's because of racism that you have high blood pressure. It's because of the post-traumatic slave syndrome and the post-traumatic slave master syndrome. That idea, the epigenetics behind that, are causing these fucking physical issues. Like outside of like sickle cell, which was just Africans that were fighting off malaria, their bodies, the red blood cells sickled against the malaria, but in turn it, caused sickle cell disease. But it sickled against malaria, which showed you how amazing the human body is. Like it fought against malaria by sickling red blood cells to fight off malaria, but in turn it created the disease, sickle cell anemia or whatever. But it's to say, like, again, to properly and effectively end racism, just run this off again. White people who racialized as white have to just stop being white. And again, you don't got to be even loud and proud about it, unless you need to be loud and proud about it. Like in certain situations, certain circles, got to just tell people you ain't white. Those same people, the second step is you got to stop fucking going to rec centers and putting on a do-rag and dancing with the black kids because you're down. You got to talk to your cousins and uncles and friends and shit, and you got to stop them from being racist, like being bigots, and in turn, depending on the position that they're in within society, being racist. Because the other thing that plays into dialectical racism is that isn't it quite funny that within this society under empire, that a lot of people that are racialized as white have instances in their younger years of doing abhorrently racist shit. That should show you in and of itself that this system was made for people to follow a role. Because the Josh Allens of the world, the fucking any other goddamn white people that have done shit of the world, they aren't necessarily bad people because they did those things when they were kids. They are just raised within a society that told them that that was okay. And that's not to say that like everybody else that is non-white hasn't done some foul shit that's like some kind of bigoted whatever shit when they was younger. Like when you don't know no better, you don't know no better. But it's to say like, okay, understanding society, it's easy to pick up on dialectical racism when you see that people have this certain like beats that they run on. Where like for the like an anecdotal story, I brought this up on the podcast before. One of my homies, his ex shorty, her friend, she told me about her friend who first time she ever met black people was when she went to college. And she said that up until that point, she was afraid of black people because of what she saw and shit on TV and all that. And I told my homie's girl, like, that's hella racist. Like, that's awful that she operated like that. And she's like, but come on, you can't say, like, you didn't think like that. I was like, no. Like, I'm from New York City. New York City, if you don't know, New York, I don't know about now, but I damn sure know when I was growing up. New York City is one of the most segregated places in the world. On a low, high key, though. So, like, for a lot of my life, I didn't interact with white people, but I never was afraid of them. And I saw, like, Mississippi burning. I knew about hella shit at a young age because you just learn that shit. I wasn't afraid of white people, though. This white woman was afraid of black people until she got to college. That's dangerous and dialectically racist because her, as a white woman, the identity politics that are put upon her put her in a position as the damsel in distress. So black folk being around her is a situation that can turn into somebody being shot or murdered, or like James Byrd dragged by a goddamn pickup truck until their eyeballs pop out. See what I'm saying? So again, before I close out, because I've been talking for like an hour and some change now, dialectical racism is the understanding that society has created roles for everybody because we are within a fixed society, within a fixed system, where that everybody plays a certain role. They don't have to though, but everybody plays a certain role, and within that certain role, people that are racialized as white get to be ignorant to a lot of society for a lot of their life to a point that it becomes dangerous for everybody else that they're around. And they can either lean into being a bigot and then possibly be a racist if they can become a capitalist, or just being very ignorant and like kind of lost in the sauce where they like aren't really like fucked up, but they aren't really understanding this shit, and like they may be like again volunteering at your local like boys and girls club, or they may just be living their life regular degular, whatever. But it creates this space where their identity is weaponized against everybody else, and then everybody else positioned within the understanding of dialectical racism is people playing their roles, whether that be the role that the society is giving them and or the role of wanting to be suckling at the teat of capital. So dialectical racism can be defeated by white people renouncing being white and everybody else understanding that the sociogeny of race was only meant to divide and make shit confusing. It can be stopped by stopping allyship, just be somebody's comrade, homie, be a human. It can be stopped by completely disregarding race, only bringing it up to understand why you should get rid of it, and like working to stop all the bullshit. So I've been talking for a while now, so I'm gonna head out. I appreciate everybody. While I've been here, I do like that y'all was watching. I like the likes. If you can, fuck with my Patreon. I really appreciate that. You can sign up, whether it be for free. You can sign up on a membership. You can hit my Cash App, my Venmo, it's in my profile. If you like the content, you can tell all of your friends to subscribe. Trying to get to 1,000 subscribers before, ideally before the end of spring. That'd be great. Like, I'm trying to get monetized on this evil ass internet. The internet itself isn't evil, but obviously, like, a lot of the shit that's on here is pretty fucked up. And like, because the voices that are on these platforms are promoted and pushed, not every voice, but a lot of the voices that are promoted and pushed on these platforms also tie into dialectical racism, but I'll talk about that later. But when you consider like the people like the Candace Owenses, the Tim Pools, the Ben Shapiros, the Matt Walshes, the Stephen Crowders, the fucking everybody else, the Jordan Peterson if he's still alive, you consider their subscriber count, and all that shit, you're like, there's no goddamn way, Joe Rogan, there's no goddamn way that many people that subscribe to you. And this isn't to say that there isn't that many fucking people that operate within dialectical racism that have these dickhead ass kind of ways of thinking. But it is to say that the British West India Company and British East India Company and Dutch West India Company and Dutch East India Company marched over the centuries. With all that being said, make sure you keep your deep rag. With all that being said, make sure you keep your do-rag cape rolled. I'm out of here. Peace. I'm out. God damn it. There we go.